Welcome to Marketing with Confidence. I'm your host, Marianne Amies. We're going to be talking all things digital and online marketing for business owners and marketing professionals. If you've been feeling overwhelmed by your digital marketing, be sure to listen along and you'll hear tips, interviews and more that will give you the confidence to create marketing you love. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing with Confidence podcast. I'm so excited to be joined today by Lauren Stokoe from IP Australia. Thank you so much for joining me, Lauren.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm so excited to be here.
We have a really, informative podcast for everyone today, and it's a little bit different to some of the formats that we normally have on the show, but I was contacted by IP Australia about a bit of a new product they have to help small businesses with trademarks. And we sort of got to talking about, even myself as a small business owner, and I've been in business for a really long time, that trademarks feel like a grey area for us. They feel like a big business problem or a big business decision. And, I think it's a great opportunity to have your time today, Lauren, and really get us all educated on what we need to know and why it is important to us as well.
Thank you for having me. And absolutely, as you mentioned, it's one of those things that businesses, you have so much that you need to think about as a small business and when you're first starting up. And often there's this sort of misnomer that a business registration is the same thing as a trademark and that you're protected that way. And it's just one of those things that more information can sometimes help so that you at least are making an educated decision. So I'm really glad to be here. So thank you again for having me.
Beautiful. Well, look, to kick off, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about TM Checker that you guys have just launched.
So I'm a director here at IP Australia, and IP Australia, for those of you that don't know, is the Australian government agency that's responsible for administering intellectual property rights. Now, intellectual property, or IP refers to creations of the mind. So basically what we look after at IP Australia are the registered intellectual property rights. That includes things like a patent, so patents like how an invention works, a trademark, which is your brand, a design right, which is how something looks, and then your plant breeder rights, which are your plant varieties, so a type of coffee bean, for instance.
Oh wow.
There's quite a bit into it, and we want to make sure that Australians are able to benefit from their ideas, and we know that small businesses are really critical to this. So we've been looking at a few different ways to help small businesses and their relationship with intellectual property. And it was I must admit, I was quite surprised when I started looking into the numbers. And we actually found that, particularly for trademarks, but for all of the intellectual property rights, there's only about 4% of small businesses within Australia, currently have a trademark or a registered trademark, I should say. And that's the lowest rate of all of the developed countries. So OECD countries, which is, I was shocked. I must have been, working in intellectual property for years. And then you sort of look at these numbers and go, oh, okay, there's something we might need to do here. So we were looking at, what might have caused this, why this may be, and found that it's largely due to a lack of awareness of what a registered trademark is, what their benefits are. And as you mentioned, some of the thoughts around, the cost or the complexity, that it could be, more of a big business thing. So we created TM Checker, what we've called it. But basically what TM Checker is it's a free trademark tool where you can enter your brand name, your logo, and it's going to give you an idea if there are similar registered trademarks in Australia or if there might be an issue with how distinctive your brand name is. So, for example, if I were to sell apples, I can't then trademark the name Apple, whereas because I wish I was Apple, but if I was selling electronic goods, I can use the word Apple. So it's a free tool to educate us small businesses who might otherwise not engage with the IP system so that they can navigate that application process as quickly as possible.
Wow. So in terms of the logo side of that, would that help people? I mean, obviously now there's so many different ways people get logos made. And, I know the designers that we work with, they're always saying like it's a big risk if somebody just copies another logo or, it just sort of gives you a logo that's not an original design. So would that actually tell people if they've been delivered a logo that might actually get them in trouble down the road?
Absolutely. So what the premise is to do just that. So someone can have a look at, even the designer could have a look at loading their logo into the tool and see if there is a potential conflict with another similar trademark. And image is one of those tricky things. I don't know if you've been on Google lately and tried Google Lens, but we're all, in the AI sort of machine learning world trying to develop more accurate and consistent tools. And so we're continuing to improve it. The tool's still in pilot as we work on, trying to get our tool up to where, a human eye would be. We're still working on that, but absolutely that's the premise, that you would enter your logo that someone has designed or that you yourself have designed and see, oh, actually there's already this shape with, this line out of it, and that could potentially be conflicting with something like this, for instance.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think, my mind naturally goes to the brand name side of it, but obviously the sort of design, the logo side of it is just, really interesting as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess then, why do CEOs of small businesses, why do they need to pay attention to trademarks?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I think the value of a brand is well understood, certainly from your audience in Marketing with Confidence. But as you know, it can, help differentiate you from your competitors. It helps give your business an identity. And this is all, a registered trademark is all about protecting that brand.
Yeah.
So a trademark or a registered trademark could be anything from a brand name or a logo, as we were just talking about, or it could be a jingle or even your business name painted on the side of your truck.
Oh, wow.
So for CEOs of those small businesses, it's important because it helps you to protect that brand identity and your reputation and safeguard against, unauthorized use, which could result in a loss of sales or damage to your reputation. Yeah. So when we register a trademark with IP Australia or with other offices, if you are looking internationally, it gives you that exclusive right to use your brand as your trademark. Which can then be sold or transferred, or if you want to, you can have a partnership with another brand. Yeezys, for instance, did that. So we found in research between 2021 and 2022 that small businesses that registered a trademark were 13% more likely to have a higher revenue growth than their peers, and they actually paid their staff more as well as a consequence. So there's absolutely sort of that side of things. Then the trademark itself, or the registered trademark, it becomes a business asset, like all intellectual property. So you can license it, franchise, co-brand. So, by leveraging it in sort of creative and strategic ways as part of your business plan, you can potentially even generate ongoing revenue streams.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I just, that's whole asset point of view, like I've just been speaking recently to a few clients about, you really need to think of your domain as an asset. And, lots of web developers build websites and they register the domain in their own name for another company, or a staff member does. And that person moves on, or somebody moves on, and trying to get domains back to who they should be. And I was sort of talking to like larger business about it, saying these are your assets. These are, these have a tangible and intangible value in your business. And from what you're saying, the trademark is the same. One day when you go to sell that business, that's an asset that you have a trademarked brand name or a trademarked logo, and there's a perceptual value against that as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, when you're sort of looking at that, I guess, branding of your business, you might look at things like a domain name, your social media handles, your business names that's registered with AusIndustry or business.gov.au. And if you're a company, then you would also look at your company name and then also your registered trademark. And those things together offer you all the sort of protection that you need, and also that opportunity to come into sort of electronic and be able to sell your product digitally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just interesting, I think, as small business owners, and as I've shared like my own experience, I can't say I've navigated this with the full information either. It's almost like we're not told. We're sort of ASIC is one thing, register your business name, and even I've, obviously over the years seen when someone's got the business name but they don't have the domain, and that's so grey. You think that because you have the business name, you should be able to get the domain. Obviously, in the early days when people were just buying up domains and sitting on them, it's so grey. That importance of owning the rights. And I guess that leads to that question of, if someone then does infringe on it, how do we enforce it? What do we do when it gets to that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there's a difference between a trademark and a registered trademark. So you might have seen the little TM symbol in a circle versus the little R symbol in a circle. So the TM symbol is like marking your ownership, but it doesn't actually register that right. So registering that right with IP Australia then is the one that is the mark that gives you that exclusive ownership. So having a TM is sort of like a placeholder almost. It shows that intent. But for it to be legally protected, then it's the R in the circle, and that's your registration. Yeah. And so one of the things to consider about is, yes, you register your trademark, but then you might need to do things afterwards to enforce it. So you would probably need to, for instance, you could monitor for unauthorized use or infringement. So this could be done by regularly searching for similar marks, monitoring your sort of competitors' activities, and just keep an eye online marketplaces or on social media platforms. And if you see that someone is using your registered trademark without your permission, you might be able to, there's a few different avenues open to you. You could send it to cease and desist letter. You could take legal action, in which case contact an IP attorney, or there's alternative dispute resolution opportunities, which IP Australia offers. And there's a lot of information on that on the ipaustralia.gov.au website. That's the main thing. And it actually happened to a close friend of mine with her small business, and she had been operating for quite some time and had set a brand up for herself. She'd become quite well known in her industry, and then she received a cease and desist actually. Wonderful. And she didn't have a registered trademark, and in this instance she was lucky, neither did they.
They were just giving it a go.
That's right. And then it goes into, there is sort of common law provisions around those sorts of situations, around who used it first and the like. So there is still protection outside of a registered trademark that comes in with the common law. So, I mean, someone, if there is sort of confusion or someone had questions, they can certainly sort of contact an IP attorney who, is able to provide advice, which IP Australia isn't allowed to, provide tailored advice, of course. But that is something that can happen, and it's definitely the ways that you would enforce that right.
Yeah, we've had it as well with, small client. I think a few years ago, like a small candle maker who'd used a certain name, and then a bigger business came and said, that's a brand in our range of candles, and the cease and desist letter, and exactly the same. I mean, in this case, she had to rebrand it. And, especially when you're a small business and you have put your heart and soul and you're trying to grow, and it's devastating to think, even just that you've, bought labels or you've bought stock in that name, to think. And I'm imagining, coming back to your TM checker, that's again where we probably should be going at the beginning when we're thinking up what our business name might be.
Absolutely. We sort of think that the earlier the better to try and avoid that situation, because absolutely, I think often I know at IP Australia we talk about the sort of financial ramifications of having to rebrand or go through potentially, if you need to proceed through to court, but it doesn't take into consideration the emotional loss that you suffer, especially for small businesses, because you are so strongly quite often linked with that brand identity. And that's absolutely right. If you are looking at potentially doing or choosing a brand name or a logo, if you run it through a tool like TM Checker, you're able to sort of preempt that and try and avoid it happening.
Yeah, and exactly right. Saving you the heartache and the lost time, and steering you in the right direction.
Exactly right.
That it's really, it's been really good to understand the tool, as well as, why we need trademarks and what we can do, the protection it gives us once we have it. What are the key takeaways that you think people should think about when, branding and trademarking their services?
Okay. So definitely work to develop that strong brand identity. So that's around standing out in your product or your services market. So is that clear and consistent message, as you well know, that reflects your values, your mission, and what you're trying to achieve. And from there, you can choose a distinctive trademark. So a trademark that's unique, memorable. It'll help your customers easily identify you and your products and your services. And from there, you have your trademark, and then it's time to maybe do some searching around, trademarks that already exist there. So that's where TM Checker comes in from a registered trademark perspective. So conduct a thorough search to ensure that trademark isn't registered already in use by a competitor. And this would be that time that you would start looking at your domain names, your social media handles, the business names and the like. And then once you've sort of got those registrations and you know exactly what you want to be called and how you want to be known, it's all about consistency. So consistent use of that trademark or that registered trademark helps to reinforce the brand identity, build brand recognition, and also helps you with that sort of common law side of things around use, who used it first and who is using it in their operations at the moment. And so having that consistency, that's something we actually had to do for TM Checker. Because we were in pilot and we were developing the tool, we had a few different names for it. We were testing it out with customers. And so we had a different URL, then we were calling it one thing for some customers and one thing internally. And it got so messy. Yeah. And that's where we had to really, listen to our own information here and advise us, right, and go, okay. So now everything's branded one name, TM Checker. Our website is tmchecker.ipaustralia.gov.au. And it's really, that's had consequence on our search engine optimization. It's just reduced confusion even internally. So it's absolutely, those are sort of the things that I would think about as a CEO specifically for a small business as well.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. That's so practical as well. So thank you. I think it's so good to, I'm always about keeping things simple. And I think that's really practical advice that someone can go out, and have a look. And I mean, obviously anyone listening to this podcast today, I'm sure they are going to go and run their brand. I'm sitting here thinking, I've got to go run my brand name through the checker.
Please do. And yeah. Feel free to reach out if you have any feedback for it. There's a feedback button on the tool. We always love to hear it to see if there's anything else we could do to make it better for small businesses. Because that's really what we're here to do. We want to support small businesses where we can and just make it easier. Yeah. Try and reduce the burden of the amount of work that you need to do in setting up.
Exactly. And I think the accessibility of it is amazing as well, because I know that traditional trademark search, when you would engage with an IP lawyer is a really big expense. And I think for a lot of small business, it's sort of like, I'll get to when I'm bigger, when I'm more serious, when we're, when we're going to expand, or it's that always tomorrow thinking, I'm not big enough yet to justify that expense. But having something even, that's accessible and gives you a first touch of it, obviously, then you can make that decision if you need to go down the channel further. But I just think that accessibility for small business is so fantastic.
Absolutely. And thank you. And thank you for your support, because yes, that's exactly right. We want to make it as accessible as possible so that for the small businesses that potentially wouldn't interact otherwise, they're able to have that avenue to come through. And then that avenue still exists to go through with IP attorneys, because there's certainly a place where you might need that expert advice. But that way there's just more options available to you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Lauren. As you said, and I'll pop the URL in the show notes as well, but it's tmchecker.ipaustralia.gov.au.
Perfect.
You've taught me. I'm completely, as I said, I'm keen to go and have a look. I love it. Yeah, I'll pop all that in the show notes for everyone. And obviously I know there's a wealth of resources on the IP Australia website as well. Absolutely. If you want to learn more. So thank you. And to everybody else, have a wonderful day. I hope this has been really interesting and insightful. And please, get in touch with me and DM me and tell me if you've had a look and what you've found out. Hey, thanks for listening to another episode. If you don't want to miss one, make sure you subscribe to the show in your podcast app. And if you love it, be sure to share it with friends and colleagues who you think could benefit from increasing their digital marketing confidence. Want more? Head to maryanneamies.com to find out how you can work with me directly, to reach out to have me speak at your event, or to grab yourself some free resources.